All right, so Psalm 21 is where we are, and we have been going through many of the Psalms over the summer. So Psalm 21 starts out like this: for the choir director, a psalm of David. And we're gonna get another one of those words in Psalms that we don't 100% know what it is in just a moment. It's the word Selah. And when you see this for the choir director, I think, if I'm correct about this, I think it's 31 of the 39 Psalms that say for the choir director also have the word Selah in them. So that's why we think this is a musical term. It has nothing to do with the message, just like free knowledge. There you go. And I could have made it up. Who knows? For the choir director, a psalm of David. Yahweh, the king finds joy in your strength. How greatly he rejoices in your victory. You've given him his heart's desire and have not denied the request of his lips. And there's Selah. For you meet him with rich blessings. You place a crown of pure gold on his head. He asked you for life. You gave it to him. Length of days, forever and ever. His glory is great through your victory. You confer majesty and splendor on him. You give him blessings forever. You cheer him with joy in your presence. For the king relies on Yahweh through his faithful love of the Most High. He is not shaken. And this little part right here of the psalm is pretty typical of what we think of as the Psalms. It's about praise, it's about worship, it's about extolling the honor and the glory of God. And then verse 8 takes a little bit of a turn. So your hand, David writes, will capture all your enemies. Your right hand will seize those who hate you. You will make them burn like a fiery furnace when you appear. Yahweh will engulf them in his wrath, and fire will devour them. You'll wipe their progeny from the earth, their offspring from the human race. Though they intend to harm you and devise a wicked plan, they will not prevail. Instead, you'll put them to flight when you ready your bowstrings to shoot at them. Be exalted, Yahweh, in your strength. We will sing and praise your might. Now, the topic of Psalm 21 is a great military victory. Israel has won. This is good news. And frankly, it starts off really strong, that praise and honor and glory, and then you get to verse 8, and it gets a little wrathy, right? Like wiping progeny off the face of the earth in fiery furnaces and all that stuff. So what's going on? So we can't talk too much about that today, but I promise you we're going to get there because some of you have asked me about this. So August 6th is Psalm 109. What this little section is, it contains what's called imprecatory elements of the psalm. And Psalm 109 is an imprecatory psalm. We're going to talk about it in detail and what that is. It's basically, how do we balance the idea of God as this loving Father, and yet there's all of this wrath too. And what does that say about God, and how do we deal with that? So that is in just a few weeks. So the summary of Psalm 21 is this. When you trust and you obey Yahweh God, that leads to wonderful benefits for David. That's what he says. And so he lists all these earthly benefits that he has, like a divine honor. Like he gets to wear a crown. You know, who gets to wear a crown? Like we don't wear a crown. I mean, we used to when we went to Burger King, but that was a paper crown. And now we don't really wear crowns anymore. I watched, it was either this week or last week, I saw this short clip of Queen Elizabeth when she was, the late Queen Elizabeth, when she was getting her picture taken, official portrait taken. She was dressed in all the regalia with the cape and the scepter and the big crown and the whole thing. And they got done taking pictures, and the photographer said, "Your Majesty, we're wondering if we might take a picture without the crown. It's just a little too much." And she said, as only Queen Elizabeth could, "Certainly not. What do you think this is? Because you don't ask the sovereign to take the crown off, right? That's kind of part of the deal. She gets to wear the crown because she's the queen. And David gets to walk around with this cool crown on because God has given him this position. Not because David's a great guy, but because God has decided this is what he's going to do. He's also given him, verse 5, the gift of glory and splendor and majesty and all of these things. He gets surrounded by this stuff constantly. And he says in verse 7, these gifts can never be taken away as long as he lives, but then on into eternity. He will always be surrounded by all of this because he'll be in glory with the great king. And so those are just some earthly benefits that he mentions. Then he mentions all these eternal benefits. Like in verse 6, he talks about the joy of God's eternal presence, being in glory with him, and then basking in his unfailing love, and the total security of knowing that we can just live our lives, and that God is there with us, and that we don't have to fret or worry. Now, none of us are earthly kings, but all of us can enjoy the advantages of knowing God. Like God's peace, for instance. Like God's peace is an antidote to anxiety and worry because we know that we don't have to say exactly the right thing at exactly the right time to get exactly the result that we need to do this thing. No, God is in charge of this, and we know that it's going to be okay as long as we lean fully into him. And we have access to God's direction for our life. We don't have to wander around bumping into stuff, wondering if we're ever going to get it together and find our purpose and discover ourselves or whatever it is we say. No, God knows what we need to do. We just need to ask him, and he'll tell us, and he'll move us in that direction. And we have God's protection. That nothing can touch us except what God decides is okay. And we have the assurance of eternity. We put our faith and trust in Christ. We have the assurance of eternity in heaven with God. Now, Psalm 21 does not stand on its own. It is linked with Psalm chapter 20. So let's look real quickly at Psalm chapter 20, which also starts out for the choir director, a Psalm of David, and also has the word Selah in it. And here's what Psalm chapter 20 says, and see if you can pick up. So chapter 21 is all about, hey, there was this big battle, and you showed up, thank you. Then what's Psalm chapter 20? May Yahweh answer you in a day of trouble. May the name of Jacob's God protect you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and sustain you from Zion. May he remember all your offerings and accept your burnt offerings. May he give you what your heart desires and fulfill your whole purpose. Let us shout for joy at your victory and lift the banner in the name of our God. May Yahweh fulfill all our requests. Now, I know that Yahweh gives victory to his anointed. He will answer him from his holy heaven with mighty victories from his right hand. Now, some take pride in chariots and others in horses, but we take pride in the name of Yahweh, our God. They collapse and fall, but we rise and stand firm. Yahweh, give victory to the king. May he answer us on the day that we call. So the bottom line of Psalm chapter 20 is asking God for something, specifically for help in battle. Others are trusting in horses and chariots. We trust in Yahweh God. And so he's asking, Psalm chapter 20, for help. Psalm chapter 21, the help has arrived. And now he's giving glory and honor to God in his goodness in the moment. And in the midst of recalling all that God has done as a result of this incredible victory in battle, David, it's almost like he gets a little overwhelmed. And he says, it's not just that you showed up for us in this fight. I mean, that was impressive. But it's everything you've done for us. It's everything you've done for me, just in my own life. And he starts to recall those things, and he starts to talk about those things. This is the ideal prayer scenario, isn't it? Like if you were going to design a prayer scenario for yourself, wouldn't you want it to go? There's this great big looming threat or problem that I have, and I go to God and I ask him to fix it, and then he fixes it, and then I praise and honor and glorify him. I mean, doesn't that sound really good? Isn't that what we want? We want for our prayers to be answered in the way that we ask for them to be answered. And then when they are answered, we're joyful. God gives us what we ask for. How do we ask for more than that? When our son graduated college, it was in the middle of the pandemic and the whole thing, he went to school in Chicago, and so he did not need a car. Now, the kids in high school had driven a car. It had been my car, and I handed it down to our daughter, and then she went to college, and so she handed it on to our son, and so he drove it all through high school, and then he went to college, and it was going to be 4 years before he needed a car. And so in the meantime, there was a family in our church that really needed a car, so we gave them that car. And so here, fast forward several years later, he's been living in a town where he has access to all this public transportation, but he needs to get his first job and do all this stuff. So he's like, Dad, can you help me find a car? Absolutely. I don't know if any of you have looked out there on the used car market lately. Do you know what's going on? Like, whoa, 130,000 miles, that's great. I got to jump on that one. And twice as much for what we would have paid 3 years ago? Okay, yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. I asked him, I said, buddy, look, we got this really limited, I know our finances are kind of limited to get you something, but what car would you get? If we could get you a car, like which one would you like? And he said, I want a Volkswagen Jetta. And the reason he wants that is because that was the car he learned to drive on in high school. That was the one that, he kind of has this fond memory of. So Volkswagen Jetta. Like, yeah, okay. Not only are we going to find a car for you that fits the criteria, we're going to find a very specific car for you, right? So I pray. And I'm praying consistently. God, send us to a car. Just point out the right car for us. And all these prayers. And then at some point in time, I'm like, well, wait a second. Why don't I actually ask God for the thing that we want? God, would you send a Volkswagen Jetta to us? But I did that thing where you kind of let God off the hook, It's like, oh, Lord, please, it would be great if you could send a Jetta. I understand that it's not a big, the car market is crazy. It must be crazy for you too. But, like you're like buying stuff back. Like you don't really have to do this, but I'm just saying. And okay, so we just pray. And we find this car, and it's not a Jetta, but I go and I look at it, and I'm walking around, and I'm talking to the guy, and he's one of these guys who buys cars from the auction, he fixes them, then he sells them. And so he comes out, I'm looking at this car, and he comes out, and I'm talking to him, asking him questions, and he just looks at me, he goes, hey, just by the way, I'm curious, you wouldn't be interested in a Volkswagen Jetta, would you? I said, maybe. And he said, well, we just bought one at the auction, and it's not ready yet, and it's not going to be ready for a little while, but it's a really good car, and it's really low mileage. It's like 67,000 miles on it, and we gotta sell it, and just wondering. Yeah, okay, well, here's the deal. Here's the problem. It's a little bit more than we wanted to spend, and we see our son in 2 weeks. And so the car would have to be done in 2 weeks. And he said, well, I don't know. We'll see. So the day before we're supposed to see Josh, I get the phone call that the car is ready. And in the meantime, some family members have heard about this, that Josh needs a car, and they've miraculously provided finances to make up more than the difference than what we were going to pay. And it's a car, you guys. Look, it's a car. This is not curing cancer. I understand this. This is not like repairing a marriage that's been torn apart. This is a car. But I think in some ways that's what makes it even more special. Like, you care about the little things. I got to share this story with my son. Say, hey, I just want you to know how you got the car. You know, God found you this car, so there you go. When God answers prayer, the way we want him to answer prayer, the only proper response is Psalm 21. The only proper response is praise and worship and honor. And it's so easy for us to treat that like a check mark. Look, this great thing happened. I've been asking God for this, and this great thing happened. And then to be like, well, praise the Lord. Before we kind of move on to the next thing in our life that's causing us all kinds of worry. Or maybe even just sharing it in a text, just, this is how God answered. Yeah, it's great. All right. And then we sort of move on. And is that it? I mean, is that the sum total of our gratitude? This little tacit acknowledgement of, well, yeah, God did this great thing, and wasn't that cool? All right, let's move on. Shouldn't it be more than that? The way we respond to God says something. The way we respond to God reveals our heart for God. It says what we believe about him and what he has done for us. If you're stuck right now in a relationship with God, and I know there are many who get stuck. I've been stuck in my relationship with God. If you're stuck, you might be stuck between Psalm chapter 20 and Psalm chapter 21. And let me explain. You see, there's this process that happens. This challenge arises. And perfect scenario, challenges arise, and we go to the Lord, and we ask for the Lord's help. And the Lord shows up in a mighty way. When we're asking for God's help is Psalm 20. God shows up in a mighty way. He does this great thing. We are relieved, and then we Psalm 21. We praise God. But here's what can happen. Some of us get stuck in a relationship with God because we ignore God completely. We just want to do what we want to do. But that's another message. It's a different passage. This is specifically talking about those of us who know God, acknowledge God, understand what God is doing in our lives, but nevertheless are stuck. We've taken things to God, and we have asked for help. We have done Psalm 20, and now we're waiting. And Tom Petty was right. The waiting is the hardest part. Really true. It's hard. We're waiting. Hey, we would love to Psalm 21, but God hasn't won the battle yet. So we're waiting, and we can get stuck there. We can get frustrated there. When is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? Come on, God. And we start to question, we start to doubt. But there's another place for us to get stuck, and it's here. God has absolutely answered. And we have then said, whew, and stopped right there, as though that's the end of the process. As though we don't have a responsibility to turn our focus and attention back to him and give him praise and honor and glory. See, both chapters complement each other. They're incomplete without each other. You have to have a chapter 21 if you're going to have a 20. And why is that the case? One of the reasons why it's the case is because praising God is what we were built to do. We are praise machines. That is who we are. Those of you who grew up in Reformed tradition probably know Westminster Confession of Faith. It is the chief end of man to glorify God and enjoy him forever. It is our purpose. It is why we're here. It is what we're going to spend eternity doing. When we praise and honor God, we're fulfilling exactly what we were created to do. Psalm chapter 66, verse 5. Come and see what God has done, his awesome deeds for mankind. I just see that, like, come and see. You gotta see this. You're not gonna believe this. Come here. Come and see what God has done. Is that our attitude? Another reason why we need to have a chapter 21, if we're going to have a 20, if we're going to ask God for things and he's going to answer us, it needs to well up in praise because it fosters deeper dependence on God. Not acknowledging God keeps us stuck in a relationship with him. It's only one part of the relationship. So wait a second, let me get this straight. God does stuff for us and we just like take it? We don't ever say thank you? It's not even polite, let alone right in the way that we honor the great King. And we can get stuck here because we're never growing, we're never testing the edges, we're never allowing God to push us, never seeing him differently in any way. We're never allowing what has happened to reflect back on him. We're not spending any time trying to figure out what just happened and how do I praise God for this? Physical maturity, when we mature physically, it leads to greater independence. When we're in our 40s, we're not like, calling mom and dad to see if we can stay out late to see the movie. At least we shouldn't be. Because we get more and more independent. But spiritual maturity is the exact opposite of that. Spiritual maturity is greater dependence on our Heavenly Father. It's more connection to him. And another reason why we need to praise God is that it is evangelistic. It acknowledges God's greatness among other people, and they see his goodness and his faithfulness and his victory instead of our own. I know who's here. We know as a church who's here at Bethany. We know who you are. And we know that many of you have come to faith in Christ years and years ago, like when you were kids, like I did. It was Sunday school or whatever, and you grew up in church and coming to church. It was great. But there are a lot of folks here who that's not your story at all. In fact, you're here trying to figure out what all this Jesus stuff is. Like, do you believe this? Do I not? What does the Bible have to say? Do I even like God? Like all of this. We know you're here. We're so glad you're here. And we know that when we put something together like a service on a Sunday, that we praise and we worship God, and we know that we're putting lyrics on the screen that are sometimes hard for people who don't know Christ to sing. We know that. And this is part of who we are. When you realize what God has done for you, it overflows in praise, and so we praise and we glorify, and we realize that there are those among us who are kind of on their way still to figuring out a relationship with Christ, and you're watching and you're seeing this. You're going, well, this seems authentic. This seems like real. Yeah. Praise and worship has an evangelistic element to it, absolutely. Here's a lesson for our lives. Who gets the honor and the praise and the glory for the good things in your life? I don't know about you. I'm way better at asking God for things than I am at recognizing God for what he has given me. Way more time asking God for stuff than just praising him. Kind of reminds me of a doctor. Over the years, I've been friends with many doctors, and I have a great doctor now. And in all the times that I have met with a doctor for something, it's part of the time I've met with a doctor because it's like the wellness visit. You're fine, but they need to do the checks and the whole thing. But a lot of the times you go to the doctor for a reason, right? Because you're sick or something's wrong. That's why you go to the doctor. And you go, and you make the appointment, and you go, and the doctor asks you all the questions, and then, try this or do that or whatever, and here's a prescription and whatever you do. You know, in all the years that I've been seeing doctors my whole life, I don't know about you, I have never one time called a doctor and just said, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. No, I'm totally fine. Yeah, everything is great. Everything, yeah, clear, all is well. I just want to say thanks. Like if you get on the little voicemail system, to make an appointment, press 1. For directions, press 2. For hours of operation, there's no to say thank you to the doctor, press 7. That doesn't exist. I mean, we realize we go to the doctor, we get healed. The miracle of modern medicine is we walk away and we get healing. But we don't say thanks. And I think sometimes we treat God this way. The doctor's supposed to do this. This is like his job, right? We get mad when the doctor doesn't fix it. We lawyer up real quick when the doctor messes up, but we don't say thank you. And I think often we look at God like, well, this is your job. This is on your job description, God. You're God, so you do and you give, and yeah. So, all right, let's keep this train rolling. But that's not the proper response for all God has done for us. Our victories, whether they're great or small, they're God's work. They're not the result of our own efforts. So who is getting the credit right now for the wins in your life? Whose power and ability is being shown through your accomplishments? Because if we recognize it is God's strength behind anything we do, our response to that is going to be multi-layered. We won't be able to stop ourselves from telling the story. Let me just tell you something remarkable that happened. I just have to tell you this. I know this is going to take a couple of minutes, but I have to tell you this story. Sir, there are other customers waiting behind you here at the bank, but I know, but I can't. I just got to tell you this story. Something's going to well up in us. We're going to stop taking credit for stuff. It's not our education. It's not our breaks in life. We're not smarter than everybody else. It's God that did that. Our natural inclination is going to be to worship him. We're going to desire to spend time with him and in his word. We're going to have open-handedness with our resources. We're going to have a drive to serve the bride of Christ. If your life has changed for Jesus, it's because Jesus has changed your life. You realize that? If your life has changed, it's because he did it. And worship services and priorities and our language and our thought life and our hopefulness and the way we treat people and our anger issues, all that stuff changes. Our serving changes, the way we look at that, the way we look at outreach to our neighbor, allowing God to do a work in us of sanctification, changing us to become more and more like him. Many of the things that we have asked for, God has answered. Have you allowed that to well up in praise for him? Is it enough? Do you ever think it would be appropriate just to go, you know what, I think I've praised God enough for that. I think I've met my quota and we're done. Here's what I want to do. We're going to go to praise and worship in just a moment. We're going to finish together with communion at the end of the service. But before we do that, I just want to walk us through a little exercise, a spiritual exercise of worship. So let's do this. Let's close our eyes and prepare our hearts to worship God. Let's start with some practical things. I just want to mention some things to you that are part of our lives. And let's just let them kind of bounce around in our hearts for a few minutes because we're going to have an opportunity to praise God for them. Let's talk about some practical things. Let's talk about health. Let's talk about our family. What about your job? What about your automobile that you have access to? What about food that you have to eat? What about wonderful relationships that you have with people in your life? Have you praised and thanked God for those things? There's some unique things that many of us have faced. The provisions of finances when we've needed them the most, or of a comforting word, or provision of peace spoken over our lives, or we've gotten comfort when we've needed to be comforted, or we've had the presence of God, and we've sensed it, we've known it. What about spiritual things, God's word? Have you thanked God for his word? Have you ever just put down the Bible in the midst of like reading a sentence? You just set it down on your lap and been overwhelmed that God has given us this incredible gift of his word that we can read freely whenever we want to? What about our church family or our grow group or guidance for our life? What about eternal life? Have you worshiped God for a provision of these things in your life? Now, I know that worship is one of those things, sometimes, because the way we were raised or who we are, our personalities or whatever, it's a little hard to be effusive in our praise and with other people around, maybe even by ourselves. But I'm going to ask you to do just that. I'm going to ask you to dare it, to risk it, because, hey, it's God. And he's worth it. And so as we go to sing and worship together, would you just allow God to be praised and glorified through your voice, through the lifting of hands if you're comfortable doing that, through focusing on what those lyrics really mean and what the consequences of those things are for your life. God, thank you for this time together. May you receive this praise and this honor and this glory. We ask this in the name of Jesus and for the sake of his reputation. And all God's people said, amen. Let's stand together as we go to worship. The prayer corner is open if you need some prayer. We'll be praying for you right back there.